that's the one piece of feedback I'm always giving to former students or mentees that are looking to get into the field of how do they show up strong. And it's like you've got to show that you've built up some of that muscle and you have that appetite for iteration and diversions.
Well, let's get started.
All right.
Okay. I'm Liz.
I'm Matt, and we're here with Ben.
Hi, my name is Ben Schoen. I'm head of design at Blink UX. We're a digital consultancy headquartered here in Seattle. I worked in our Boston office in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and we design breakthroughs, breakthrough products. We uncover breakthrough insights through our UX research, and more increasingly, we're leveraging AI in breakthrough ways for a variety of clients and products and brands. I also teach at Northeastern University in Boston, some design students there, and really enjoy that. I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah.
Thanks
Excited
for
to have
coming
you.
back. Yeah.
So many things to start. Let's save the AI for later. Because I feel like if you lead with AI,
Yeah,
sometimes people
yeah.
are like, oh, man, here we go.
Yeah, that's true.
We can start with the fun stuff. So maybe just your journey. Like, how did you get to Blink? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I did my undergrad at Webster University in St. Louis, Missouri, and studied journalism and communications, but I really loved the artifacts of those things, and so that drew me to design, and had a couple years as a junior designer at different places doing graphic design on the East Coast, and realized, hey, I think I need a proper design education, not just a journalism grad that was good at Adobe. And so looked at a few different grad schools, had some connections out here in Seattle, and got in and did 2 years at the School of Art in Visual Communication Design, MFA, and absolutely love that program. That was a while ago now, 2008, 2010, and really enjoyed my time there, and then spent another 3 years in Seattle, worked at MoPOP, which was called EMP Museum, and worked at Microsoft, and then worked at a studio called Tectonic that was on Capitol Hill, and then that studio was acquired by Blink in 2018. So I've been with Blink since 2018, and somewhere in the middle of that timeline, I moved back to Boston and opened up a remote office there, and it's been going pretty well.
That's so great.
Do you want to go, or do you want me to?
No,
Okay.
I have to sometimes like tamp down my
Yeah, same.
Tell me more.
I know.
Tell me more.
Same. Yeah.
So yeah, we can tag team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just sort of curious, like, what does your design practice kind of look like as head of design? What's the kind of day to day? I think people would be curious to hear about that.
Yeah, it's really fun. I really love the sort of agency model of doing design work, and so the amount of variety is really exciting. And so every 3 or 4 months, I'm working on with a new client, a new brand, a new product, a new problem space. Companies come to us when they're stuck and they need a breakthrough, and so that's where we come in to sort of augment and extend a lot of internal design teams' superpowers, which is really fun, and create sort of breakthrough concepts that really deliver great experiences for end users, but also deliver on business value for digital products. And so I get to work with folks at the New York Times. We've done a lot of work with NASA, and then being based in Seattle, we do a lot of work with the tech companies here: Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and that's really fun to work on that variety. And then lately, the last few years, we've really tried to diversify into other areas as well. So utilities, banking, financial services, insurance, some of these sort of less sexy areas that have really terribly designed experiences, often for enterprise users, folks that, this is their day jobs to use this software. And I think the bar is high for those folks. They want really great products, just like you and I use when we use the Google ecosystem or, Airbnb. Those are the high bar that enterprise users are kind of demanding out of their products. And so that's fun to sort of bring that sort of consumer grade UX into these enterprise spaces. So we see a lot of work in that area.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
So hearing you speak to this, this day and age, mid-2026, the ecosystem for your work sounds robust, actually. Like, how is the world of work for you right now? Is it growing, burgeoning, exciting, or, because I feel like the economy and what students are hearing in particular is a lot of mixed messages, right?
Yes. I was just having this conversation with a colleague the other day, which is it's both those things. I
Yeah.
feel like we're in big trouble and things have never been better. We're in big trouble in that, work for agencies that's a probably 20-year trend of there's less and less agencies around. There's less agency work, especially as our peers have sort of grown in these in-house teams throughout different companies. As companies and corporations and brands and products have realized the value of research and design, they've kind of built these really great in-house teams. And those are the people that we partner with on projects, but that tends to be a smaller slice of the pie for agency work. And then working in big tech, that's been volatile over the last few years around projects being sort of paused, and that work has slimmed up a little bit. At the same time, that's why I mentioned this idea of diversifying into less volatile areas, like utilities. We did a lot of work with SoCalGas, which is a big utility provider in Southern California, really rethinking their whole ecosystem with enterprise tools, as well as sort of the tools that you would use as a consumer to sort of pay your gas bill. Again, these are sort of unsexy things that are actually pretty fun once you get into it. And then you paused on it a little bit, but then the last year, certainly the last 6 months, the last month is all AI, about sort of how our design process is fundamentally changing with the different tools to be able to augment and extend our design superpowers, and then designing AI experiences for the end user, which is really exciting because we've been designing AI experiences for a long time, but they've been sort of in that hypothetical space. But now that the technology is caught up, there's a real opportunity for these things to be really great for users and customers to be able to harness some of the powers of these LLMs and different sort of aspects, agentic, generative AI within these products.
So I know we paused on it, but I feel like we're talking about it
No,
now. So let's keep
it's-
going.
I think it's unavoidable, actually.
It is unavoidable.
Yeah.
So I know you're teaching some students at Northeastern. You might have the same thing that we see here at UW. We have this continuum of sort of people use the word AI literacy. I don't love that word because I don't think any of us are ever going to be AI literate because it's such a shifting landscape. But there are people who think AI is important and it's significant. And we definitely have some folks here who think not only is it not important, but they are dismissive or ignorant or refuse to engage with it.
Well, I don't think I'd take that last bet. That seems dangerous.
You're not encountering that with your students.
I'm not encountering that with my students, not as overtly, and I certainly recommend not, sort of putting it off to the side as some bubble that's going to pop. I think a lot of these experiences, we've all experienced it. These moments of like, oh, that's helpful. That's very handy.
It's better.
It's
than I
better.
thought.
Yeah. So I think these things fundamentally do change the landscape. But we are 100% in the messy middle of trying to figure out how, within the design world, how to use these tools, how to deliver these experiences. And then I just see certainly a ton of angst within academia and with my students and the different design programs of how to teach students how to use these things, what's the sort of ethics and responsibility around that, and how do people do it in a way, again, the language I use is how can it augment and extend my human abilities as opposed to having it be all about efficiencies and shortcuts. And so those are the things I talk about when I'm teaching design students about how to use these tools within their projects.
How does that land with students when you talk about that augment and extend versus shortcut?
They certainly nod their head. They're in agreement. They're agreeing with their instructor. But the work comes in, and sometimes you could see that they're cutting corners. They're looking for shortcuts, and it didn't take very long for all of us to see that really quickly. Around like, oh, well, why did you do this? Well, it's like, the
AI
tool,
did that
the
for
AI
me.
did that. And it's like, okay, so you don't have a defensible position. That's fine. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But then you're not really sort of gaining the knowledge around the assignment and how to think about user experience design or visual design, graphic design, some of these other things. If you're outsourcing those things and don't have a strong POV, right? Like that's what I want to sort of instill in my design students is the ability to have a strong point of view around the ideas and the concepts that you're putting together. And I think AI can help in that pursuit, but I think oftentimes it can sort of provide a shortcut that I don't think is very helpful to sort of gaining the knowledge and, the reason why they're at a premier university program.
Right. Keep you doing it on your own, I guess.
Yeah.
You can do that. How has, I'm just curious, maybe this is hard to answer, but how has it changed the way that you approach like problems or tasks you set up for your students? Or has it, I guess?
I think, I don't teach a ton in that, like I'm an adjunct, so I'm doing, one class a semester. So I'm not sort of fully in the program at Northeastern. And it certainly has cut down on, I give less writing assignments because, that felt like that was a bit of a shortcut. And really focusing, and we were talking about this before we started recording, but the critique, the in-person presentations and reviews. So doubling down on that is great. And the students love that, or they're sort of appropriately excited and scared. And there's just so much design skills and knowledge and experience to be had in, all right, get up in front of your class, present this design, whether it's, a poster, something physical or digital, and you're sharing it on a screen, and then solicit that feedback. So how to get those fundamental skills around presenting your work and asking for feedback and being hungry for that. And then the other side of all of us in the audience, how do we develop skills on giving a good critique? And so teaching those frameworks for how to give proper critique, I think, is a big focus. And AI can help with that a little bit, but a lot of that's sort of live in the classroom or live within a Zoom call. And that's where, you need to do those design mental exercises of trying to defend your work or articulate what you like about it, or, what some of the shortcomings are.
So this is the space, we've talked about this a lot on this podcast. And I will say, for people who come out of a background in studio or design, that the back and forth of critique and feedback feels so much more integral to those practices, those communities of practice.
Yeah.
A lot of our students, and I don't want to call out particular majors or disciplines, but you look at their grades, I mean, they get perfect grades, close to perfect grades. And I'm wondering sometimes if there's not a misalignment with, this is what success looks like for me, and the feedback that I've gotten outside of areas like design or studio work has never been as critical as maybe, I don't want to say they need it, but this idea that really successful professionals seek out feedback.
Yes.
And I will say that I have run into some students for whom the seeking out of critical feedback is something they avoid wholeheartedly. And I start to worry. I'm like, what does that mean in your transition from student to professional if you are now actively avoiding feedback? I mean, even the places where you're excelling, I mean, the paper that you wrote that you got a 4.0 on here, it sits in your faculty member's box, in the corner of their office, because even if they wrote copious pages of red ink on that, giving you insight about improving your work, you never sought it out. I'm wondering how we get students like that to sort of change their practice, to seek it out in a way, if they're not encountering it through the practice of a profession like design.
Why are they not seeking that out? They're scared? They're not willing to be vulnerable? Like, what's the core reason? Is it not part of the pedagogy?
So I think the faculty wholeheartedly think it's part of their pedagogy, right? So this is how we teach writing. This is how we teach, critical thought around this subject. I feel like students, and this is a product of K through 12, not just higher ed, are in this state of, I have to check a box and then I have to move forward. And so success for me was the grade on that paper and I'm done. And I'm just thinking, as I hear you talk about the real world and where your work sits right now, that is not what success looks like. Success is this ongoing dialogue of growth and challenge versus I hit this marker next, I hit this marker next.
Yeah, I think where my head goes with part of that is sort of, in other disciplines I'm sure have this, but a big part of the design work that we do and the things that I look for in interviews, and the thing as I try to teach at Northeastern as well, is around divergence and iteration. And that is where all the work of design is done. And so having designers, whether they're students or the people that I work with at Blink UX, I need them to do lots of divergent concepts, oftentimes at low, medium fidelity. And that's where the magic happens around sort of lots of different ideas. Like you have to do 20 bad ideas, 10 mediocre ideas before you get to one good idea. And I think that is, to your point, not the sort of academic mindset of a lot of students, where they want to take one idea and sort of refine it. They want the feedback that can get them to an A. And I'm like, oh, that's great. Okay, throw it away. Show me something else completely different. And that's a design skill. And I'm constantly looking for that in portfolios when I'm doing interviews. Too often I see candidates show the final work, and it's great and it's interesting. And I'm like, okay, well, how did you get there? Show me the messy middle. Show me the things that didn't work out and why they didn't work out. Like that idea of like, craving that critique or craving that failure of like trying something out, having it not work, and then having to go back to the drawing board. I'll literally say, what's on the cutting room floor, and can you show me that? Because I didn't see that on your website. I didn't see that in the presentation that you gave. And I feel like that's the one piece of feedback I'm always giving to former students or mentees that are looking to get into the field of how do they show up strong. And it's like you've got to show that you've built up some of that muscle and you have that appetite for iteration and diversions.
I think that's profound, actually, because we've also bantered around like maybe every student should just take a studio art class and like have to get studio critique or something like that. But this idea that students could be better burgeoning professionals if during their time as undergrads, they went through and started curating what my cutting floor looks like.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
So I love that concept. Like maybe we just start leading with that. A few students like, show me your mess. Like show me what's in your recycling bin, because I got to see that. Because I feel like if I had to hedge my bets, a lot of students would say, no, first idea, fully formed, success, A, done.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you, that worked in that class for that assignment.
Yes.
That is not going to work in the real world.
Yeah.
So how do we foster and engender that space as part of our undergraduate experience? I feel like Gesture does that all the time, but we got to do it for more people.
Yeah, I think it's a demonstration of the breadth of your curiosity, and I think that that takes some vulnerability to pull
100%.
up all your things, and then to be able to tell a good story around this is why I didn't present this.
Yes.
So it sounds like almost like knowing why you didn't. It's a defense of your choices. I'm really curious, like, and you kind of spoke to this already, but are there new trends that you're seeing with students that you're teaching just over these past few years? Like, what's your take on the current landscape for young designers, I guess, and specifically those are the ones you're teaching?
They're very ambitious, and I feel like I feel very lucky. The program at Northeastern tends to attract folks that have somewhat a strong idea of what they want to do. It's the whole university is a co-op model, and so it's usually a 5-year program where you're doing a co-op, 2 or 3 times over that 5 years, where you're doing a 9 to 5, and they get sort of that crash course of real working experience. And so that tends to attract people who want that and then know what kind of co-op that they want. And that co-op model is great because it forces folks to quickly figure out what they don't want to do, whether it's within design or jumping from different majors. I feel like that's really compelling. So that tends to sort of, get folks that are ambitious, and that's really fun to be able to teach them and kind of push them in different ways. So I don't know if that's a trend. That's one thing I'm seeing. I do feel like some of this, the sort of proliferation of digital products, certainly with AI, has also had this pendulum swing back to people that want tactile stuff. So I see students that are like, oh, I like that, Ben. That's interesting. I want to do graphic design. I want to do posters. I want to do physical things and exhibit design and that type of thing. And that's really interesting to see, because I think before it was there's so much gravity around sort of digital product design, because in so many ways it was accessible and so many, people know and love these products on their digital devices. But that sort of pendulum I've seen swing back, and that's really fun, because that's where I got my start, was doing more graphic design, poster design, that type of design discipline.
That's really cool.
So I kind of like this juxtaposition that you have to exist in sort of an analog world and a digital world at the same time, especially with trends of people wanting to go back to tactile work and things like that. Do you find a tension, or are you able to reconcile the fact that you're working with clients on, design around AI end products and things like that, and then you're teaching students or working with others who want to be in a tactile or more analog world. Like, how do those worlds reconcile right now?
Yeah. It's really fun. I get so much value out of teaching that class. And it's a real sort of like, all right, this is a very different experience and a different type of design. I remember the first jarring thing I felt when I started teaching, maybe 2019 was I first started teaching regularly. This juxtaposition from my day job, working with designers that I think are some of the best in the industry, and the high bar that we had at Blink, that we still have at Blink, and seeing that and critiquing how do we make this good design great, and pushing that and figuring out how to push these designers, and then working with students and be like, oh, this is bad. This is not good. I was not prepared for,
Where we're at.
And then, so it's just a mind shift of like, oh, of course it's bad. They're literally freshmen, coming in, don't know what design is, and figuring out how to navigate that was a good sort of, check on sort of my skills around how do I give critique? How do I sort of grow designer skills? And that was really interesting. And so, again, that still exists today. Mm-hmm. I have a much more expected mindset when I come into that work. And again, it's just, all right, like, it's not necessarily about how good this design could be, this poster, this website or whatever, but how much growth can you have on this project, whether it's a semester long or a month long. That's the measurement that we're trying to do, which is like grow the quality of the design ideas, not necessarily just have really good outputs.
I'm curious to know, not just in teaching, but especially in young professionals at Blink or, new hires, early career folks that you work with. We're not talking about any individuals, but sometimes our students love this discourse around like a behind the curtain conversation. Where are these shortcomings showing up, right? Mm-hmm. So there's the space of like, wow, your work is bad. Like, that's not a conversation you actually have, because that's not how professionals engage in growth. But at the same time, what could not just students, but early career folks, so maybe new hires, people recently finishing degrees, where can they improve? Because I think our listeners might really like hearing some behind the curtain talk around that.
Yeah. I mean, Liz, you mentioned it already, this idea of curiosity. That was in my notes coming into today, like having that be such a core part of how you show up. And I see that in the designers that we have. I see that in some of my students and different folks that I get to work with, and that's really great. And so when some of the folks are struggling, I feel like they don't come with that sort of excitement and curiosity in the work, and really trying to understand what's the problem that we're solving and how can you be user-centered. That's definitely sort of the background that I have, the work that Blink has built up. And then I think the bigger challenge, especially for younger career folks, is like, how do you marry that idea of user-centered design with business value, right? Mm-hmm. Like you got to understand that, we're working for companies and corporations that are trying to turn a profit on these products. And so understanding that, ideally, that's a Venn diagram where the overlap is the same, right? Where the user-centered concepts drive the business value for the product, for the company, for the brand. But sometimes I think you got to unpack that and understand that. So I love it when design students have some business background and they are able to bring that into their work, ask some of those critical questions, and then seek feedback and critique from the client or from the team at Blink around, all right, I'm passionate about this idea, this concept. I think it solves for the user need in this way. What am I missing? How is this laddering up to broader, business objectives, and sort of having that idea of curiosity to like kind of scratch away at that. Mm-hmm. And that inevitably gets out of you. You're going to get out of your design circle and get into, these broader circles. And that's a skill set that we're looking for. That's the difference between projects that are good design projects and projects that, fundamentally, deliver value for the client.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I've definitely chatted with some like recent grads from design who get their dream job at a company, and then it's, they're really passionate about a concept. They present it to a client, and then it's not selected as like the thing. And like getting through that and overcoming that, like, do you see that with your young professionals, and like what kind of advice do you give people to how to get through those moments of like, I put all this time and energy and I am curious, like, how do I get through this?
Some of our critique framework is, tough on the work, not on the person. And this idea of like not being too precious and, having these ideas that you sort of nurture and carry, and then feeling gutted when they sort of don't get selected or they get critiqued. And I have two minds about it. One, I'm like, yes, like detach yourself. You are not the work, especially in design, because we're not artists, right? It is in service of the user, in service of the business goals. But the other part of my mind is like, I want my designers to care about their work. I want them to fret over, the ideas. I want them to be passionate about it. And that translates in them being able to express a compelling point of view when they pitch the work. And so I think that's a big part of what I see a lot of folks needing some growth on in their early career is this idea of like, you can create great, compelling work, but you also need to present it and pitch it and sell it in a compelling way. So much of design is talking about your work. And I feel like sometimes that's where the skills are less so. And you just need at-bats. It's an iterative approach. You just got to put in the time and know that, to use the baseball analogy, you're going to strike out. No one's batting 1,000. If you can bat 300, that's pretty good.
Yeah. That ties in. I mean, we talk a lot about story and how you can have the most amazing internship, but if you can't tell a good story about it, then why does it matter? And so what does that practice iteration process look like for people? Do you guys go through rounds of reviewing each other's pitches before the client, and like how much is enough?
Yeah, I definitely think there's formal and informal critiques happening all the time within our work. A big part of my job is sort of setting up, usually within a client project, a weekly critique with the client. Usually this happens on Thursdays. Usually it's 60 minutes. Usually it's on Zoom. And it is a performance. We are presenting concepts that we've, worked on and collaborated. And we're looking for critique, whether it's from our colleagues, but mostly from various stakeholders on the client side, some of which are designers, many are not designers, and that feedback is valuable. How do we, specifically with our non-design stakeholders, how do we soak up their domain expertise, because they know their product, they know their users better than we do, and that's what we're seeking. And so knowing that your design work is not about sort of getting an approval or getting picked, but your design work is set up to be able to get that person from customer service or accounts receivable or from engineering to be like, oh, that's interesting. That's not going to work in this way. Or I think this would work better because of this previous work that we've done. Again, like that's the job, is sort of showing up, being able to have those conversations to get the work to be better. And there's a lot of juggling going on to like have that moment happen once a week. And so our designers are sort of, trying to absorb that, certainly early career folks, and figure out how they can sort of show up really strong with that. And usually it's a weekly deadline. I think that's one thing I really like on the agency side, is that our projects tend to be fast and furious. And our designers are usually only on one project at a time for 3 months, fully dedicated. And the sort of intensity of those weekly design reviews, it's high stakes. But I think that's the type of pressure that I think produces great work and growth from designers.
It's really cool.
Oh, it is. It makes me sort of pine for this opportunity. Like, could we put together some programming here that embodies some aspects of your practice, the practice you see in industry and the work, for those students who would say to us, I don't get that opportunity as part of my undergraduate experience. Like how, and I think that would be a good challenge for us. And Ben, one thing just to sort of situate our work, so we have these 3 pillars here: gesture, mission, challenge, and story. Mission is exactly what you're talking about. Whose problem are you solving, right? Students are so used to solving their own problems or a problem crafted by a faculty member for them. That's not work. That's school. Challenge, which is you only grow when you're uncomfortable. And I feel like we're talking quite a bit about these moments of discomfort, and yet all of your early career folks seem to benefit from working through that discomfort, working through those moments, because that is growth. And that's something you can definitely avoid, challenge and discomfort as a student in college right now.
And still look great on paper.
And still look great on paper.
Right?
And then
Like,
the story, like telling it. Like if you can't tell the story of what happened, it might as well not have happened at all.
Yeah.
So this is our struggle. This is where we're at all the time in terms of the programming we put together. How do we get students who aren't able to take advantage of that just because of either discipline structure or the work that they're doing? But we know, and we hear it from every single employer and professional we've brought into this podcast, has said the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They need all of these things. And some students, I think, don't realize that they do need it, right? They'll kind of be, head in the sand for a while, like, well, this is what I'm working on. I'm working on my grades and my degree and the requirements to finish my bachelor's versus, yeah, but you got to be ready for what comes next. And the story that you're putting together right now is not actually getting you ready for what comes next.
Yeah, it's you're never going to be gifted this perfect environment.
No.
And I'm probably painting a beautiful picture of our design culture at Blink, which it is. I love it, but it doesn't always work that way. There's tons of bumps and failures along the way. And so it's never sort of as well crafted as that. And so my recommendation to students, early career folks, is you got to build that cohort for yourself, whether it's your fellow students, particular faculty, people in the industry. Find a mentor and get work in front of them early and often. And you got to sort of crave that. I think that's certainly a big recommendation. And then when you're looking for a job, obviously the market's tough right now, and folks are, hungry probably for anything. But you want to find a place that has those folks that are going to push you and challenge you. You want to, for designers, make sure you're getting a design job where there's designers that are way better than you. That's a key thing. Don't join a company where you're the only designer. There's some benefits to that, certainly some fast growth at startups and different things like that. But I'm always encouraging folks to find companies that have a good sort of working team that you can snap into. It is a fundamentally collaborative profession, and there's good collaborative teams and bad collaborative teams and everything in between. And those are the type of questions I'm hoping candidates ask me during the interview process. And those are the type of questions that folks should be asking, recruiters in the interview. Have that curiosity around, like, how does work get done? What's that collaboration environment? And how can their skills, can be a compelling fit for that.
On the flip side, are you seeing yourself or recruiters, other people in the hiring process, are there red flags that when they come across either resumes, LinkedIn pages, interviews, that either you or recruiters are like, ooh, this is not great. We got to steer clear of this?
Yes. Red flags. I think, going back to that idea of iteration, like, can you show me some of those things? Especially, a lot of folks feel like they don't have the portfolio that they want, that they haven't had the projects and the opportunities to do the great design work that they've had. I think that's okay. I think you only need 3 portfolio projects. You don't need a ton. Each one of those case studies on your website or in the presentation that you give during the interview really kind of have to tell a story. I think that's key. And I'm always looking for those iterations and divergent explorations. And so when I don't see that in candidates' work, they tend to go in the no pile. And if they do, they're like, oh, let's bring that person in. I think that's a big one. The other thing, sorry to go back to AI, but I don't know if you guys have thoughts on this. I found that AI has really lifted the floor for folks in good and bad ways, in that I think there's a lot of candidates that probably weren't that strong that now look a lot more competent than they are.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a lot harder work less for me, but more for recruiters to kind of sort through those. And it's harder to stand out for candidates because a lot of these tools have given people sharp, concise answers to complicated questions, and they can present themselves very well. And so now the people that didn't need those tools to show up as strong have to find new ways to stand out in this sort of needle in the haystack, and that's tough. And then my answer to that is, like, you just got to make connections. Like, design is not special compared to any other industry. You've got to go out there, informational interviews. That's my biggest recommendation. Like, go find designers and get on a call with them, ask them pointing questions, develop that network of purpose. That I feel like is huge. And that's hard work. It's a lot of people not writing you back. But I feel like that's that's how folks stand out because that's how folks get hired, especially in this market. You're not gonna you'd be very lucky to sort of apply, with 1,000 other applicants, and your merit is all of a sudden gonna raise you to the top of that stack.
As disgruntled as someone might be, like, but I've been told I'm meritorious all these years,
Yes.
right? I like that concept of a network of purpose as well. I think one of the things we see, students come to this place from all different backgrounds all over the world. We have an amazing student body here, and one of the things I always tell them is day one, especially your work, you should start networking. You never
Yes.
know who you're with and what those connections are. And students are in a space where they make social connections so easily. Not that you have to be, perversely, opportunistic around it, but just think about the networks that you do have here and be, purposeful in terms of these are some people you're going to connect with later on in life. You're going to grow as professionals. It might be completely divergent, but at the same time, having that story of professional growth with other people who can be referees to that, I think is huge.
Yeah, I mean, especially at the University of Washington, you're at an elite university with so much happening, there's so much opportunity, and that's such a great in to be able to grow that network, whether it's within your school department or more broadly. That's certainly been extremely valuable for my career. Having done 2 years at UW, and just that community of UW design alums has been really great. It's been really fun and satisfying, and I encourage folks to do that. As much as they can. It's a skill too, right? And a lot of it, again, is a lot of failure, a lot of sort of getting ghosted and not getting replies. But those are the things I think can really help build up your network, this idea of that community of folks that can give you honest feedback. I think it can be hard to find, especially after you leave university. I think there's a really nice. I love
practice it here.
Yeah, you can practice it.
Yeah.
And it's so fun, and then you leave, and then you get out in the real world, and I think you said this on the already. Like, a lot of companies don't have the time and day to give you that. They're not there to grow your career specifically, and so you can't just count on your employer to provide that wholly. So having that community, tapping into your UW network is a great way to build that for sure.
It's funny how even just the term networking,
it's awful.
like,
Yeah.
it's awful, but it's really like, it's that community practice.
Yes.
And I think it's so amazing that design, you have that built in. I think it's maybe going through those critiques. It builds like an inherent trust within one another. And it's just interesting to think about like how we can cultivate that for more students. I think it's something we always try to build in these experiences of making people stand on our story stage and talk about themselves and talk about their experiences, but it's just sort of naturally occurs there.
Yeah. Do you see that your students are hungry or timid with that? Do they understand how important it is? Or do they want to just be heads down? I'm just here to write the paper, do the work.
I think there's a select few that rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
But seeking out opportunities to be uncomfortable and to fail is really, it goes against everything that they've learned in terms of how to survive within the educational structure, right? So that's what we're constantly working on, is like, how do you build an experience where people can come in and get immersed in that and realize that it benefits their own trajectory when they seek that out. And the few that do, we see them grow so fast, so quickly. I mean, we've seen freshmen that we've worked with for a year get amazing internships, professional internships at great companies. And you would never know if you met them that they were 19 years old.
I know.
So it's possible, but I think it's rare. So that's something that we're always thinking about, is like how to cultivate that for people that aren't in the creative educational programs,
Yeah, my experience, sort of experiencing that in the UW's design school, was just intense. And, again, like I think I mentioned, like my undergraduate degree was in journalism and communication, and that certainly wasn't part of, critique culture wasn't a big part of there. And I'd done all right getting some entry-level jobs, but felt that need to get a formal design degree. Went to University of Washington, like participated in those crits, and I don't know, I assume they're still as brutal as they were before.
How did you get through your first one?
And especially as a grad student, I wasn't sort of in the sort of mix is the undergrad program. I feel like is particularly, sort of brutal and intense in like great ways. And sometimes at Northeastern, I'm telling my students like, you guys don't know how good you have it. Like,
Yeah.
go take a class with
I'm way too nice.
go take a class with Karen Chang or Annie Van Gould, like those, and that is great. And I don't think you would have. I'm sure there's limits to that, right? There's probably some downsides to extremely aggressive critique culture, and maybe some of that happens at UW. I don't know, but by far the benefits are really great around sort of experiencing that and having that high bar and knowing that your work is gonna get cut down, and that's the insights that you develop from that are super important. And that was really really great to have a front row seat to that at UW.
And that feeling when you've made something that they like, it's like, yes.
Oh, totally.
So much sweeter.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well earned.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's what you're seeking. And that's kind of what you're seeking in the job world too.
Right.
Like, or at least with us, we've got this agency client reaction. And, I was just on this project last year with the New York Times with their athletic team, which is their sports app, which is phenomenal design team there. And, really great project, really sort of high stakes around creating a new compelling experience. And we were just sort of hitting our heads on the wall and struggling to really kind of break through and connect with the stakeholders. And there's no shortcut. It was just iteration, collaboration, seeking the right type of feedback and making revisions. And then sure enough, I was kind of right after the new year, we had a big milestone critique. Man, if we don't get it this time, this project might, really tumble. And we crushed it. It was great. And it was just to get that, approval from, some of those top level stakeholders that, again, are non-designers. They have a different perspective, but they're like, yes, not only this is what I want, but you did it in an interesting, creative way. And yeah, that's what you're seeking, that type of thing. And that's what, you can get that in the university setting, and then hopefully get in a place in your work environment where you get access to, having those type of reviews. I think can be really valuable.
I think one thing that's sort of coalescing for me right now is I'm thinking of the students who don't have that. One of the things I would sort of, after hearing this conversation today, say, if your existence as an undergraduate is one where you are passively succeeding, you are passively getting perfect grades and checking every single box, I'm going to question, are you actively growing? Are you actually growing in a way that is changing who you are and preparing you for the future? Because again, if your engagement with your work, academic work, is in a passive state, you are not going to be a part of the world that exists after graduation. So, and that's not like here, the doom is on its way for you. But now is a great wake-up call. Like, what can you do? How can you shift what you're doing and who you're engaging with and what that work looks like from a passive level of engagement to something more active and intentional? And it can be around anything. I feel like design is its own unique special case, but there are ways to actively engage with feedback and growth and challenge that every single student that we work with can do, but they have to make that choice. And part of me is just, after hearing today, saying this is a great time to say, if I'm going to make one mid-year resolution, since we're not at New Year's. We had a New Year's resolution show, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah. So maybe this is our June summer resolution.
Almost a halfway point.
Halfway resolution, half-year resolution. Yeah. I'm going to be active in seeking out feedback. I'm going to be actively thinking about where I can challenge myself. I'm going to be actively seeking discomfort.
Yep. I think that's the whole game. And it doesn't go away. Like, I still have to challenge myself, and in the back of your head, you're like, this deadline is Thursday. Do I have time to get feedback? Is that feedback actually going to allow me to get the deadline? So again, trying to then figure out what kind of feedback that you want and trying to mold and shape that is such a important design skill, but probably skill for anybody. Putting yourself in that place of discomfort. All growth comes from discomfort. And that's, certainly true in university setting, but certainly in, out in the real world as well. I guess I had one point, and I'd be curious to get your perspective on this, what you're hearing from students as well, around, I think in design and other industries probably too, a good way of growing your career is not at one company to move your way up, but actually is to jump to different companies, and you grow by sort of like moving around to different companies. In my career, I've taken an opposite path, and I've sort of been at Blink for a long time, and before that at Tectonic, and certainly early in my career, I had a few different jobs. But I don't know. I'm always given that slightly, critique on folks around committing to a role and not just being at a place for 6 months or a year. Like when you see those resumes, and it's like, oh, since you graduated, you've been at 5 roles in 3 years. That's not a red flag, but it is also concerning, partly because what I need at Blink is I need someone that can do the work at a high level over a long period. The quality of the output from my designers that have been there 2, 3, 5 years is so important. And that sort of like collaboration that you build up of being able to finish my sentences, and we find efficiencies, and we just work really well. That's hard to do when you have folks that just are like, no, I think I'm going to go try something else and jump around. I don't know if that's a hot take, but
It's not a hot take. I think it is different for different people. I think some people have found great success and growth within one org. And I've seen some people who are long timers who are, the stories they have and the journey that they can sort of account on that path, phenomenal. And I wouldn't change that for the world. That said, I think the reality is people do shift orgs, people do shift companies and opportunities. But I think instead of, if I see anyone who's been at a place for less than a year, it is an immediate red flag, right? Like you're going to have to justify what happened.
Yeah.
Now, there are good justifications for that, for
absolutely.
sure.
Yep.
But that's a red flag versus, seeing something out for in that, 2 to 5 year window for me starts to say, I was not just a part of a team, but I was part of a team that wanted to keep me on and growing. So that signifies one thing to me. I've had friends, this is a totally disparate field of work, but who are in fundraising, right? And so for fundraisers and advancement people and things like that, sometimes you have to see a campaign through.
Yes.
And so I know work is totally different, but have you seen a campaign through? Have you seen something get messy? Is your cutting room floor full of stuff?
Yeah.
Do you have stories of that? Do you have stories about the mess? Do you have stories about success, failure, success, the back and forth, the iterative process? I think those sorts of stories only come through time. So that's why when I see 6 months here, a year here, I'm like, I'm concerned. And if you do get to an interview with me, I'm actually getting to the point where like, what happened? Because I don't know if you can convince me that there is an iterative process and a campaign, like something brought to fruition.
Did you solve hard problems?
Did you solve hard problems? Yeah.
Were you curious about the place too, right?
Yep.
Like I can imagine it's like you want to see that they're invested enough to be like, what can I get from? I feel like every environment I've ever worked on, it's like I learned something from everyone that I work with, but that takes intentional effort and time, and
I had a recruiter tell me one time she loved seeing, this is sort of our demographic, you went back for the same job year after year. And so like, you were a lifeguard at your local swimming pool, YMCA or something like that, but you did it every single summer from 8th grade till graduation. Now, is being a lifeguard going to be fundamental in your success at Blink? I don't know, but the fact that someone kept hiring you again and again and again, to me signals, wow, you're employable. I like that. Whereas as soon as I see the 3 month, the 2 month, nothing else, I'm like, what happened? I worry.
There's just certain skills that you gain when there's that longevity involved. And I need those skills in the work that I want you to do. And if you've sort of just bounced around, but that's a great example of the lifeguard, or even if you are involved at clubs at the university level, like showing that you didn't just do it in your senior year, but you did it over multiple years, and you went from, a mid-level role to a leadership role or something like that. I take notice on those things when I'm looking at candidates. The other thing I see at Northeastern, I love the co-op model. That's definitely great, and the design program is really great. But what I always see is they offer this combined major, which is not a double major; it's a combined major, and so it'll be business plus design, or computer science plus design. And I'm trying to talk kids out of that all the time. That's like I feel like that's my job freshman year, to be like, and I get why Northeastern does it. It's really compelling. I'm sure it attracts students that, on paper want to have both these things. But I've seen it on the seniors where you're split on too many things and you actually didn't get the deep design skills. And do you want to be a designer? You should just do design. Design by itself is a profession and an industry and an academic pursuit. And when they try to mix and match these things, and then you kind of scratch at it and you're like, do you really want to do the business degree? Do you love going to those classes? Or do you have some family pressure on why you're doing that? Because maybe design is not sort of seen as a viable career path, or, they think the market is going to value that sort of computer science plus design on their diploma. Nobody cares about those things. And so I'm always trying to get folks to double down on your course of study. Don't feel like you have to double major or minor. Nobody cares about a minor. Those things are not, if the courses are valuable and that it's part of, what you're building up is great. But I don't know. I'm always telling folks to really kind of hone that one degree and get the most out of it.
Dig deep,
Yeah,
depth of a
100%.
breath. Yeah. There's so much pressure. I remember having that in advising conversations all the time with students. Why are you doing math on top of art? Just tell me more about it. What are you thinking? And they're like, well.
And is it? Do they have good reasons, or is it mostly they feel like someone is going to want them to have that, and they're trying to create this future scenario?
It was almost always false career goals, right?
Yes.
If I have math, I'm better off for careers. And I was like, tell me more about why. Are you going to be a mathematician full time? How many of those do you know? But I think there's also this: if I'm here, I should maximize.
Yeah.
And maximize to students isn't always I'm going to dig in real deep. And then you see those students who do figure it out early, and they get the scholarships and they have internship opportunities, and you can get so much more out of an experience when I think you dig in.
Yeah.
But
Those are the two sides of the same coin, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's the same question about duration and
Yes.
tenure at
Yeah, yeah.
places.
Yeah.
Are you digging deep?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this and being here. Such a gift to get to hear about a little bit about your journey and get advice for current students. I think it's invaluable. So thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Want to hear more from Gesture? Check out the rest of the UNHIREABLE podcast on YouTube and Spotify. For even more content, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at gesture_UW.